Announcements none. Papers have been laid. Motion.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that all the business on today's order paper be exempted from the provisions of paragraph 2 of Standing Order 10.
The question is that all the business on today's order paper be exempted from the provisions of paragraph 2 of Standing Order 10. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. The ayes have it.
Statement by Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have two statements to make following matters raised on adjournment at the sitting of the National Assembly on 27th of April 2021. The first statement relates to a matter raised by Honourable Shakil Mohammed on the right of every member elected in constituency number 3 to travel to Agalega, which forms part of the constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, I have received a letter from Honourable Shakil Mohammed on 9th of April 2021, where he has expressed his wish to visit Agalega, which forms part of constituency number 3, of which he is an elected member of the National Assembly, to meet his electors. My office acknowledged receipt of this letter. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to inform the House that there is no restriction on any citizen of Mauritius to visit Agalega. However, any citizen proposing to visit Agalega by his own means should inform the Outer Islands Development Corporation. The OIDC provides for regular trips to Agalega by chartering MV Troketia. Any person wishing to visit or to travel to Agalega on board MV Troketia should book a ticket with the OIDC. In regard to the request of Honourable Mohammed, I wish to inform the House that currently there is no ship leaving for Agalega, as the MV Troketia has left for dry docking to Sri Lanka on 12th of April 2021 and is expected to be back to Mauritius on 20th of May 2021. The next voyage of the MV Troketia to Agalega is scheduled for 28th of May 2021 by the Outer Islands Development Corporation. However, in view of the current COVID-19 situation in Mauritius, there is a sanitary protocol which has been established for passengers from Mauritius proceeding to Agalega, whereby they have to undergo 14 days quarantine in a quarantine center at their own cost and free PCR tests on days 0, 7, and 14, which should be negative. If it so happens that the date of departure of the MV Troketia is delayed by a few days, the person has to stay in the quarantine center until the vessel leaves. The Honourable Member may wish to note that the MV Troketia departs from Agalega after a minimum of 5 to 6 days following its arrival. Mr. Speaker, sir, my second statement is in regard to a matter raised by Honourable Ami Amia on the issue of drugs in Rochebois. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have taken note of the matter and have conveyed the concern of the Honourable Member to the Commissioner of Police. I must say that ADSU teams lay special focus in the region of Rochebois and the surrounding areas with a view to countering drug dealing transactions. As some suspected drug targets operate thereat, the exercise of information collection and working with informers are given special attention by field intelligence officers. Crackdown operations based on credible intelligence are regularly carried out. Unfortunately, in the past, on certain occasions, ADSU officers had to face hostile reactions in the area during such operations. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have on several occasions in the past invited honourable members having any relevant information to communicate same to me in confidentiality. Mr. Speaker, sir, the House and the nation are aware that since we took office in 2014, government has provided more resources in terms of additional staff, equipment, and logistics to relentlessly fight the drug scourge. There have been a record number of seizures and arrests over the past years, the latest in the series being the seizure of 243.5 kilograms of heroin, including the packaging, and 26 kilos of hashish, of a total market value of about 3.4 billion rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, I seize this opportunity to reiterate my unflinching resolve and determination to root out this scourge from our society and dismantle the drug network. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Public Bill, second reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill makes provision for an additional amount of 150 million rupees under the vote of the Ministry of Education, Tertiary Education, Science and Technology. Mr. Speaker, sir, this additional provision is meant specifically to finance expenditure relating to the activities of the MES and will supplement the grant required to finance its operations and its commitments. I would like to highlight the context which has led to the situation whereby this funding is being required. The 2020-2021 budget was presented in the context of the COVID-19 budgetary constraints, where all ministries, departments and statutory bodies, that the ministry would be able to meet its financial commitments out of the allocated budgetary provisions. As the House is aware, the COVID-induced situation had major implications that led to the readjustment of the school calendar and the rescheduling of examinations. All national assessments and examinations were rescheduled, and SCHSE examinations are now expected to be completed by June 2021. Consequently, the pandemic also impacted on the budget, particularly with respect to the examination expenditure. In line with education reform, a new assessment, the NCE, has been organized for the first time in Mauritius this year. The organization of the NCE entailed preparation and printing of new question papers, the enlistment of services of invigilators and other exam personnel, their training, allowances for security services, the associated costs related to infrastructure and logistics. Other factors that have contributed to the increase in examination expenses are the foreign currency fluctuations, with the pound sterling being exchanged at a higher rate, increase in freight charges with respect to the transportation of question papers and scripts, strict compliance to sanitary protocol requiring reinforced examinations logistics, and additional number of invigilators, supervisors and markers. The recurrent budget of the MES has been reworked in light of the above and was estimated at 453.5 million rupees. Up to now, the MES has been able to finance its recurrent budget from funds available in its accounts, amounting to some 300 million rupees. And thus, a shortfall of 150 million has been noted. Mr. Speaker, sir, this supplementary amount will be needed to meet the expenses referred to above. Conduct and marking of PISAC grades 5 and 6 assessment, conduct and marking of the NC assessment, conduct of the SC, HSC examinations, including the cost of foreign exchange operations. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would wish to conclude by drawing the attention of the House on the fact that the provisions for sponsorship of the Cambridge SC and HSC examination fees amounting to some 273 million rupees were already provided for in its budget for 2019-2020 and were carried forward for the payment of fees in 2021. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have listened very carefully to all orators who have preceded me, and there are two issues I'd like to say from the very outset. It's the following. We are a Tuesday. The Prime Minister, as leader of the House, has decided that the supplementary appropriation bill would be taken today for the second week running. He knew it, and he chose it, and he did it knowing that there could not be any parliamentary questions this morning. That indeed shows how democratically bent he is and how he enjoys being different to others. Second thing which I'd like to say.
Listen, Honorable Shakir Mohammed.
Yes?
Go to the debate directly.
I am. In fact, I'm just going onto the road, and the road has to lead. It leads to it.
All these are,
And second thing which I'd like to say is that I'm very happy to have the opportunity of at least, if I'm not mistaken, this is the second bill, number 2 of this year, 2021, and that is an opportunity that we cannot avoid since government is not at all producing any bills and they're not really busy working in Parliament. But I've seen the Honourable Minister of Finance make his intervention very economical. Because, for instance, when he is to talk about the 11.9 billion that he is seeking our approval for, let's bear in mind that this is 11.9 billion that he has already taken. This is what Mauritians should know, taxpayers should know, electors should know, that they have already taken that money. But the fact that he's very economical with the truth is what really astounds me. The fact that he does not even comment on the previous statements of his colleague ministers from his own government, from financial services in the past, who have said that at no time money belonging to taxpayers would be utilized for the BII saga. Let us not forget how silent and economical he was, because this is very important. He seeks our approval when there was a commitment on the part of government not to utilize public funds. So the fact that he's silent about this violation of their own commitment is something that has to be underlined. He is very silent over the fact that the Prime Minister, his own colistier, his own friend in actual fact, his own friend had meetings in his office prior to the general elections of 2019 with the representatives like Salim Muti of the Suka Cashback Gold, promising to pay them 4 days before the general elections, promising to pay them against another contract that had already been entered into. That is a fact. But this is, I'm sorry, I'm not giving way. I'm not giving way.
Order!
I'm not giving way.
Order!
This is no. If he raises a point of order, he tells us which point of order.
Order!
And not to raise it, this is point of clarification, not point of order.
Order!
This is completely false, Mr. Speaker, sir. If you're averring that I made such promises, you have to prove it before this House.
It's in the press, you met him and that's it. Accept it.
Press.
You met him, you
Press.
promised
The press
it,
is your
and
vote.
you bought your votes.
Honorable Shakir Mohammed.
Yes.
I think this point has sufficiently been canvassed by previous orators, and even during the budget time. And so go straight to the debate that's...
Mr. Speaker, this is going straight to the debate.
I'm still, show good manners towards me. Yeah, just wait.
Maybe I should be shown the same by allowing me to speak.
Please. I'm paid for that work. Help me. Yeah. So I'm still speaking. What I've said that during the debate on the budget and now during the debate previous orators have raised that point. And so, this has been sufficiently canvassed. Move to other points and go further, please.
Mr. Speaker, the issue about meeting with Salim Muti and making promises with regards to Sukupash Kabalo has never been canvassed by any single orator. Not a single. It's the first time this is being canvassed, and it is being canvassed. And obviously, I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will move to another point very quickly because it has taken not a very long time for me to hurt government and hurt the Honourable Prime Minister because he is guilty of having bought votes on the eve of general elections. And he is confused. He thinks he's a court of law. Here, I say what I say, and I'm a member of this House, and you cannot stop me, even if you have le galon de Premier Ministre that you don't deserve.
Go to the debate.
So, to the debate. What another thing? You talk about BAI. This government, led by Sir Anirudh Jagnnath, with the minister, Prime Minister here in that government, all the ministers of the first government of MSM since 2014 December, they had decided that they would loot that group for political reasons and nothing else. Is it strange? How is it that the Minister of Finance doesn't talk about it today? How is it that until today, not a single person has been prosecuted or found guilty, not even prosecuted for these supposed and false allegations that the former Prime Minister was making against the administration, the officers of the BAI group? How is it that all what was being said was Ponzi scheme, but not a single person has ever been prosecuted for this matter? Not a single court has entertained a case. The DPP has not entertained a case. The former Prime Minister, Sir Anirudh Jagnnath, said there is no case against 14 officials of the BAI group. And today, we are therefore coming to mop up the mess created by the predecessor of this Prime Minister, who happens to be, not coincidence, his father and the former leader of the MSM. The MSM have got blood on their hands. That is a fact. Blood.
Second, Mohammed. Withdraw that word. Withdraw the word blood on the hands. You don't have. This is
Okay, they have got blood money on their hands.
I mean, this is my ruling. Either you agree or you disagree.
Okay, I withdraw it. Just not to be stopped every time, I withdraw it. So they have committed wrong, and whatever they are trying to take from the taxpayers today, in fact, is illegitimately being done because of their mistakes and their lies. The MSM have lied to the people whenever they have to portray this whole issue about the BI group. What the Honourable Minister of Finance does not say is that how come he keeps quiet, and I will put in a document here that shows all the shares in the BAI Company Limited that have been realized, in LMLC Limited, in NMHL, in ENL, in Omnicane, in FinCorp, in United Docs, in Air Mauritius, in all those other companies that this company, which was supposedly have to have done wrong, have invested in all those companies. And what was interesting is that money that was realized from the sale of their shares, held by the BAI Company Limited, 2,230,000,000 and 131,514 rupees. I put in that document a list of all the money that has been recouped only from the sale of shares of a supposed Ponzi scheme. Where has this money gone? And the next question which I will ask the Honourable Minister of Finance is to ask the Prime Minister, what was his relationship with Mr. Katral of Omega Group? How many times did the Honourable Prime Minister meet Mr. Katral of Omega? How many times did the Prime Minister preside any meeting, if at all, pertaining to Omega and the sale of Omega and the valuation of Omega in the books of the NIC for 2.5 billion rupees? Why is it kept quiet, the fact that this was evaluated at 2.5 billion rupees? And this was precisely the value that was removed off the books of NIC, but clearly the auditors never wanted to sign off because there was a hole in the books of the NIC.
So, Honourable,
Apollo, precisely.
Honourable Mohammed, You take the responsibility of whatever you're stating.
As opposed to government, I think. Que ça déo, mon ça déo, l'état mon brigade. Tu poursuis moi la coupe tu peux faire plus que ça. La vérité, moi pas la vérité encore.
Both sides of the house here. Order. Order.
Who was Minister of Finance at the time? And every single time that the issue of Omega Arc comes up pertaining to Apollo, every single press has reported that the Prime Minister loses his cool and his calm. Why is it that he's so jittery about the Omega Arc affair? What has he got to be afraid of? And what is he trying to hide? What is he trying to, whom is he trying to protect? That is the shocking element. Negligence in the management of him when he was Minister of Finance. Did he not ask that a letter be written, signed by Mr. Manraj, the Financial Secretary, on the 6th of January 2017, in which it's addressed to the chairperson of the NIC, who was Minister of Finance, Pravin Kumar Jagnnath. And that letter is with reference, it's addressed a letter of comfort, sale of Apollo Bramwell Hospital. And it says here, it is a letter of comfort in relation to the sale of Apollo Bramwell and to Medical and Surgical Center Limited, the buyer. A government that has consistently hid it from the public. He has hid the fact that they've always been using public funds when they've been saying exactly the opposite. The government has, in this particular letter of comfort, stated therein, providing a comfort to the request of the NIC to meet any shortfall in the event the selling price of the hospital building and leasehold rights to buyer is below 2.5 billion rupees, which is the value appearing in the books of NIC. Whatever I've said today, I table this letter, is truth. And whatever government has been saying is far from the truth. Question, why is it that government has hid this letter from the members of the public? Why is it that the Minister of Finance has been very economical in his presentation of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill? Why is it that the Minister of Finance does not refer to all the sums of money that has been received by his political party, the MSM, by that very same group?
Yes.
Yes?
Please. You can't put insinuations, make accusations. This is politics. Go to the budget.
This is it? The document?
Go to the estimate, go to the debate itself.
Mr. Speaker, I know
there is, please, there is no time for politics here. There's no time for politics. Go to the debate. This doesn't form part of the debate. Please.
So, I'm coming to the debate. When he says that we need to give him permission for money that is already taken, what is it for exactly pertaining to the NIC? Let's understand that. Is it not coming to reimburse the hole that was created in the NIC by government? When CL Group was given Apollo, was it not given Apollo below market price? Insultingly below market price? 700 million rupees for the equipment? Was the valuation carried out? And where did that money, the 700 million paid by CL Group, go? It went to the consolidated fund. It did not go to the NIC. Imagine, the NIC becomes owner for 1 rupee. For 1 rupee in the deed that is signed. Of all that the BAI Group held, Apollo included, 1 rupee. If I don't call that theft, what is not? This is grand theft. And on top of it, becomes owner of it, sells the equipment to CL Group for 700 million, but the 700 million does not go to the NIC account, goes to the consolidated fund. If this is not enriching the coffers of the state unlawfully, what is it? So today, we have a government that pretends to take the high moral ground, teaches the opposition lessons. The Prime Minister says, where have I committed fault? The Prime Minister goes on, where have I committed fault? He was Minister of Finance when the 700 million did not go to the NIC. Why was it unlawfully kept in the consolidated fund from property that, in my view, was unlawfully taken from a group for 1 rupee? If this is not disguised nationalization, and today we are surprised that we have been rated, our rating with regards to Moody's is going down, and investors have lost confidence. Mr. Speaker, he tells us to approve the transfer that has already been made for several billion rupees in order to correct the wrong they have done. But why does he keep quiet about all the money that the MSM has not returned to the BAI group?
Well, now you're going into politics. I have no means of verifying anything you're saying about that. So this is debate. This is debate. Go back to your debate.
I am referring here to facts that were spoken in this assembly. Documents that have already been produced and are part of Hansard. And those documents are the ones I'm only referring to, and I'm not bringing in any new element whatsoever. I'm only referring to documents that form part of Hansard already. And those documents are every single transfer of money to the MSM that the MSM has pocketed.
Honorable Shakil Mohammed, I have already ruled on that.
Are you saying I don't?
My ruling is that there is no politics in the debate. Whatever Hansard or whatever from where you quote, my ruling is my ruling.
I shall bow to your ruling and not speak about the money given to the MSM. I bow to it. I bow to it. And this little silence here will make people try to understand what I was trying to refer to, but then again, it forms part of Hansard. And yes, the Prime Minister...
If you have anything, now I see you're commenting upon my ruling. No. If you have anything to say, Honorable Shakil Mohammed, have the courage, going in press conference and say it. But don't use the cloak of parliamentary immunity. Here you're using parliamentary immunity just to accuse people.
No, I'm speaking the truth. And those are facts that they have never denied or challenged.
For the truth, go outside. In a press conference, you say anything you want. But here, don't discuss my ruling.
So I will not speak the truth here. I'll keep it for outside later on. Fair enough. I will not refer to Hansard. I will do it later on outside in a press conference. Fair enough. So what exactly is the Minister of Finance trying to do by remaining quiet about those very important issues? Why is it that the Minister of Finance does not address those very important issues? Why is it that the Minister of Finance does not tell us how much was paid to the administrator, who happens to be the very person chosen to be the administrator of Air Mauritius, 26 million pocketed? Why doesn't he tell us all that? Why doesn't he tell us about all the wastage that has been made for the friends of government who have pocketed money and enriched themselves unlawfully because government has chosen them to destroy a group that was in fact totally legitimate? Why is it that the Minister of Finance keeps quiet about that? I totally understand him. He did not form part of the team that created the mess. But I have some news for him. Whenever you congratulate the former government for what they've did, you cannot only take the assets, you're also liable to take on the liabilities. And indeed, it is a huge liability that this government carries. Let's simplify it. Let's simplify it. There are two issues that this government cannot answer. Two issues. They got together to destroy a group. They take public funds in order to correct their wrong. And as a lawyer, what I call it is footload on the part of ministers who are here to administer with reason and honestly the affairs of the state. This is footload on the part of those ministers. And the fact that the Minister of Finance decides to keep quiet and not to address those pending issues, the fact that the Minister of Finance keeps quiet with regards to the non-payment to the super cashback gold, members who are still waiting for their money, is once again makes him party to the wrongdoing. He should and cannot, he should be aware and cannot run away from the fact that whatever he is asking us to do, we are just acting as rubber stamps, in fact. I think Honorable Utim said it very carefully and precisely. We are being asked to act as rubber stamps. Whatever wrong he has done, he's already done. Whatever destruction the government has tried to do has already been done. Let us not forget even people close to their committee. And that's not politics, that's truth. And it's in the documents of the accountants and the administrators of the BAI group. How many of them have bought cars for below value and could not even pay and had to bloody return the cars? How many of them? Bisun Mangu. What explanation is there for that? What explanation is there that friends of government have enriched themselves, or at least have tried to enrich themselves? Is that a coincidence? And today, he comes to ask us for billions of rupees, comme si de rien n'était. Monsieur le Président, avant de conclure, il est nécessaire pour que les Mauriciens et les Mauriciennes, les électeurs de ce pays, réalisent que ce que le ministre des Finances nous demande, c'est de lui donner l'argent qu'il a déjà pris sans notre permission. C'est de donner l'argent, d'approuver une faute que ce gouvernement a commise, mais non pas en millions, mais en milliards, plusieurs milliards. Ce que le ministre des Finances nous demande de faire, c'est de venir ici, plusieurs années plus tard, d'approuver un crime qui a été commis en détruisant un groupe pour des raisons politiques. Ce que le ministre des Finances nous dit de faire, c'est d'approuver le fait qu'un Premier ministre puisse rencontrer ceux qui sont l'argent, qui veulent leur argent dans le soukopage bagol, leur fasse des promesses, mais ne tient pas la promesse. Il veut qu'on devienne partie prenante de ces promesses non tenues. On refuse cela catégoriquement. Monsieur le Président, il est vrai que tout ce que je dis va faire mal. Il y a une seule façon pour que le gouvernement puisse répondre à cela, c'est en insultant ceux qui disent la vérité. C'est en inventant, sans pouvoir substantiate ce qu'ils envoient comme insulte. C'est l'âme des faibles. C'est au fait un gouvernement en partance. C'est un gouvernement sur le départ. Ils sont peut-être là-bas dans l'hôtel du gouvernement, mais ils ne détiennent aucun pouvoir. Le peuple a découvert la supercherie, le vol. But this is the supercherie? Asking us to give money? La supercherie, c'est nous demander d'approuver une somme d'argent. Et la cause de tout cela, Monsieur le Président, c'est la négligence criminelle d'un certain nombre de personnes qui ont décidé de jouer la politique.
I will ask you to withdraw that word criminal.
La négligence criminelle?
Négligence. You can say négligence.
Négligence politique et non pas criminelle.
Thank you very much.
But I still think it though. Thank you very much.
Honorable Chiratan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'm glad to intervene on this Supplementary Appropriation 2020-2021 Bill number 16 of 2020, as it gives me the opportunity to shed some light on some of the items of expenditure under consideration. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is aware, the Supplementary Appropriation Bill is to provide for the supplementary appropriation by votes of expenditure in respect of government services for the financial year 2020-2021. The consideration today in front of the House is the appropriation under the votes of expenditure in respect of 9 government bodies of a total sum of 17 billion rupees, out of which 11.9 billion rupees under the vote of expenditure 27.1.
Honorable Shakil Mohammed, listen to the reply. This is courtesy. Don't show your back to the chair. That's your back.
Let me start again.
What is this?
Did I interrupt you, Mr.?
So if you're not talking to the back, you're going to chat in 1 minute. This is what you call parliamentary democracy. Show good manners, listen to the minister. He's replying to your speech. This is debate. And you people go in the press talk about parliamentary democracy.
No, it doesn't exist. We don't talk about it.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the consideration today in front of the House is the appropriation under the votes of expenditure in respect of 9 government bodies, out of a total sum of 17 billion rupees, out of which 11.9 billion rupees under the vote of expenditure 27.1, that is the centrally managed initiatives of government, sub-item National Property Fund Limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, during the financial year 2020-2021, an amount of 11.9 billion rupees was injected by government into the NPFL, out of which an amount of 7.9 billion rupees was provided to enable the company to meet its immediate debt obligations towards its creditors. The remaining sum of 4 billion rupees was used by the NPFL as the holding company to inject capital into the National Insurance Company Limited, NICL, for the latter to implement its restructuring exercise and to address the substantial asset gap and capital deficit of the NICL, which was caused by the impairment of the assets that were transferred by the special administrators from the ex-BAI group to the company, amongst others. Accordingly, on 22nd September 2020, the advance of 11.9 billion rupees was provided to the NPFL for settlement of its immediate debt obligations and onwards injection into the NICL, for the latter to address its asset gap and capital deficit, pursue its restructuring plan, and file its audited accounts and statutory returns with the regulator as per the requirements of the Insurance Act 2005. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is aware, on 5th May 2015, the NPFL was incorporated as a company under the Companies Act 2001, with the mandate to repay the 16,225 super cash back gold policyholders and the 3,448 investors of the Brahma Asset Management Limited, representing a total investment amount of 24,100,006,924 rupees. Out of the 16,225 super cash back gold policyholders and the 3,448 Brahma Asset Management Limited investors, 16,141 super cash back gold policyholders and 3,033 investors of Brahma Asset Management Limited have registered with the NPFL for repayment purposes, representing a total investment amount of 23,983,205,677 rupees. Note that, Mr. Speaker, that to date, 84 super cashback gold policyholders and 415 investors of Brahma Asset Management Limited have not registered with NPFL, representing a repayment amount of 69,937,030 rupees as per the established criteria. 3 agreements were devised for the repayment of the super cashback gold policyholders and Brahma Asset Management Limited investors. The first agreement was entered in May 2015, the second agreement in June 2016, and the final settlement agreement in July 2017. To date, 16,137 super cashback gold policyholders and 3,015 investors of Brahma Asset Management Limited have been paid a total amount of 17,386,575,118 rupees. Out of the 16,137 super cashback gold policyholders, 30 have been partially paid for a total amount of 25,767,377 rupees. According to the final settlement agreement criteria, a total repayment amount of 166,159,671 rupees is still outstanding for registered super cashback gold policyholders and investors of Brahma Asset Management Limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, upon its setting up, the NPFL received funds to the tune of 6.8 billion rupees from the special administrators of the ex-BAI. Additionally, an amount of around 11.73 billion rupees obtained through facilities provided by government and financial institutions was raised and used to fulfill its mandate, that is to repay the registered super cashback gold policyholders and the Brahma Asset Management Limited investors for a total amount of 17,386,575,118 rupees. Payment of interest for the year 2018 and 2019 for the syndicated loan to the tune of 500 million rupees had also to be effected. Funds raised by the NPFL to repay the registered policyholders and investors and to settle interest on its syndicated loan of 500 million rupees is made up as follows. First, 6.5 billion rupees as syndicated loan from a consortium of 4 banks. Second, 500 million rupees as bridging loan facility from SBM Bank Mauritius Limited and the Mo Bank Limited. 650 million rupees in the form of redeemable preference shares issued to SBM Holdings Limited and SICOM Limited. 680 million rupees as advance from government and 3.5 billion rupees as loan through a line of credit from the Bank of Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to enable the NPFL to meet its immediate debt obligations towards creditors in August 2020, government agreed to a capital injection of 7.9 billion rupees in the company as follows. 6.624 billion rupees for the syndicated loan of 6.4 billion rupees and the accrued interest of 224 million rupees. 520 million rupees for the bridging facility and the accrued interest, and 731 million rupees for the redeemable preference shares and the accrued dividends. Moreover, the government agreed to the conversion of the advance of 680 million rupees into equity of the NPFL. The NPFL received the capital injection of 7.9 billion rupees on 22nd September 2020, and on the same day, the repayment of the syndicated loan, bridging facility, and preference shares, including interest and dividend due, had been effected by the company. As of date, the NPFL has only the credit facility of 3.5 billion rupees and accrued interest of 686,288,000 rupees 49, amounting to 4,186,288 and 2 rupees 49 as debt owed to the Bank of Mauritius at maturity on 30th June 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the NICL, that is the National Insurance Company Limited, the company was set up in 2015 to safeguard the interests of some 130,000 life insurance policy holders and some 1,000 staff and sales force. In view of the substantial asset gap and capital deficit of the NICL, which was mainly due to the impairment of the assets that were transferred by the special administrator from the ex-BI group to the company, and the carrying encumbrances on assets transferred, the accounts of the NICL could not be certified by the auditors since the setting up of the company. With the inherent challenges and complexities of the transfer of undertaking, in addition, the Financial Services Commission had called for an urgent capital injection in the NICL in line with the requirements of the Insurance Act. In order to put the NICL on sound financial footing, government agreed to inject a capital of 5.7 billion rupees in the company through the NPFL, which is the holding company of NICL. An initial amount of 4 billion rupees has been provided in the current financial year, and the remaining 1.7 billion rupees will be created for in the next financial year, that is 2021-2022. The capital injection of 5.7 billion rupees into the NICL is subject to the following conditions. First, the NICL implementing rigorously its proposed restructuring plan. Second, a strict control being exercised on the operations of the NICL to ensure its financial viability. And three, an eventual disposal of NICL and the NIC General Insurance Company Limited. Mr. Speaker, sir, the objective of the restructuring and capitalization of NICL is multifold. First of all, it lays the required foundation by addressing the inherent challenges arising from the transfer of undertaking, thereby protecting, more importantly, the policyholders' interest. It further strengthens the financial base of the company such that it can create value from the existing lines of business, new ventures, and strategic initiatives. The structuring measures will further lead to a cost-effective and streamlined operation for long-term sustainability through an optimized business model, distribution channel, and HR structures, and enhanced insurance products. A project supervision committee chaired by the Permanent Secretary of my ministry has been set up, comprising senior staff of my ministry, the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, and the Office of Public Sector Governance, and also the Internal Control Department. Furthermore, the NICL is currently working on development of business plans for launching of new lines of businesses and products with a view to create business value in the medium to long term. Mr. Speaker, sir, the above measures have enabled the NICL to complete its long outstanding audit and actuarial valuation exercises for the period 2016 to 2020. The filing of audited financial statements and regulatory returns for these periods were effected in December 2020 to the regulator and authorities. I wish to reassure the House that the NICL is rigorously pursuing the implementation of its strategic and restructuring measures and is looking forward to completely transform its inherent challenges during the course of the year. Mr. Speaker, sir, at this juncture, let me come back to some of the points raised by the honourable members of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, first, I must say, it's unfortunate that every time this government comes to Parliament with an estimate of supplementary expenditure, we hear the same rhetoric. We just heard it. We do this just to avoid PNQs and PQs. When everybody knows it, it's in the standing orders. Whenever there is an ESC and Committee of Supplies on the order paper, there's no PNQs, no PQs. Yet they keep saying it, as if we are responsible for that, and we are depriving them of their rights. I mean, the standing orders are clear, and they are here to be followed, whether you like it or not. But the irony, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that when they are given the opportunity to put questions, they either walk out or provoke to be ordered out. That's the truth, that's the facts. And we've witnessed that so many times here in this House, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, going back to that 11.9 billion rupees allocated to the NPFL. When the House will remember that the first time the question was put in this House as to the solvency of this BAI group, it dates back to November 2013. The then leader of the opposition and leader of the MMM, party to whom Honourable Eugene belonged to, referred to this group as running a Ponzi pyramid scheme. And he even reiterated the concerns of the IMF report at that time. And having full knowledge of that operations and knowing that the public investors would eventually end up as victims of such a scheme, it didn't stop the MMM from pocketing 10 million rupees.
From talking about MSN taking money from BI, and now we are allowing the Honourable Minister to talk about MMM. Is that fairness?
Order! 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 First of all, Honourable Tim, Honourable Shakil Mohammed, parliamentary democracy, the speaker is speaking. How many times I have to remind you about parliamentary democracy? The rule of debate. First, you ask the floor to raise a point of order. Do it?
Yes, sir, I have a point of order to raise. Mr. Speaker, when the Honourable Shakil Mohammed was speaking, you interrupted him and prevented him from talking about politics, and you prevented him from referring to the money which MSM pocketed from BI. Now, Honourable Mahin Siratan is doing exactly the same thing with another political party. I hope that you will give the same ruling to Honourable Siratan. Thank you.
Point of order noted. My ruling, you can only reply to what Honourable Shakil Mohammed is stated, but don't bring new elements of politics. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Rule of debate.
Yes, I was saying that 2013, it was known to most of the members who are sitting on the side of the House how this group is pocketing money from the public and using it for other purposes other than that, giving back returns to those poor public investors.
On a point of order, he has just made an allegation against a company. See, those
Order, please. Order. There is a point of order. Make sure there is a point of order.
Oh, it is.
Please.
It is.
You're not number 2 speaker. Quiet. Quiet, please. You don't have the floor. You don't have the floor.
He cannot make an allegation against a company who is not here, anyone to defend it in Parliament. That's number one. And whenever he makes an allegation, whenever he makes such an allegation of fraud, he should be able to substantiate them. He cannot do it. Whereas the difference is whenever I wanted to make allegations, it was substantiated by documents which you did not allow me to put in. That's the difference.
You made your point.
Good.
So members who are not present, names, people who are not present in the assembly, can't refer to the name. Please continue your debate.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Honourable Utim also in his intervention mentioned that my predecessor, in a reply to a PQ on the subject matter, stated that no public funds would be used to repay.
I apologize. One point before that. I thank you for having ruled, but if you could please ask him to withdraw what he said about not having paid people when they took money. At least you would withdraw. He has already said it. He should withdraw it.
Order.
He should withdraw what he said because you ruled on it.
Let me rule now.
Thank you.
I will check the recordings. Rest assured, if there is anything to be withdrawn by any member here, he will have to withdraw.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was referring to what was stated by Honourable Utim when he intervened on this subject last week. And he referred to a reply from my predecessor that no public funds will be used to repay the policyholders of Supercal by Gold. I think what he omitted to say, and should I say what he deliberately omitted to say, what the predecessor or my predecessor stated on several occasions on the financing of the policyholders. Mr. Speaker, sir, I presume he didn't want to embarrass his newly found ally. Who I believe is the shadow Minister of Finance of the Alliance de Désespoir.
Now, don't get involved in politics.
But I must say, Mr. Speaker, sir, at the time of the collapse of the BAI group, the assets in the accounts matched the liabilities as reported in the books. And based on that, government,
Honourable Patrika Siavaden,
and with the assurance by the then minister at that time, it could be deduced that there would be no public funding. Unfortunately, as pointed out by the then leader of the opposition, back in 2013, the group was all a sham. Une coquille vide, Monsieur le Président.
Once again, a point of order. He's saying it again, sham. No.
make sure you have a point of order.
It's exactly the same point of order that you've ruled already. You have told him that he cannot attack a person or a company that's not present here. You've ruled on it. He's done it again.
So, as a rule, if somebody is not in the house, you cannot mention the name.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm referring to what was said back then. So, can you go back and check in the Hansard what was said back then?
What was said back then? He has to quote when was it said, by whom, and what, where, and should put in the document. That's standing order also.
This is not standing order. This is not a standing order. You make sure you're not obstructing the debates. Make sure you're not obstructing the debate, and make sure, please, and make sure you don't raise fraudulent point of order. Make sure. Please, go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the assets were highly overstated and could not match the liabilities. In fact, most of the assets, if not all, had to be written down. Thus, we have a large gap between the assets and the liabilities, Mr. Speaker, sir. And as a responsible government, the government had a duty to protect the 16,225 super cash by gold policyholders, the 3,448 Brahma asset management investors, the 130,000 insurance policyholders, the 1,000 employees of the group, and also how to ensure that the financial stability of the country is not impacted. That's what we did, Mr. Speaker, sir. And we did at least for those people not to lose everything. And this is a fact that no one can dispute, Mr. Speaker, sir. They talk about brader the assets of the group. I would ask them to have a good chat with their newly found ally to know whether they were really brader as they claim. Also, Honorable Ramphal, who is not here today, last week when he intervened, and today, Honorable Mohamed. I mean, for me, they're the least person that could teach us any lesson on that. I mean, Honorable Ramphal talked about traumatism last time. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we are here today, the whole situation arose because his party, their party, the Labour Party, they have been the one who allowed it to happen when they were in power. And I don't think anyone from the MM would dispute that fact. This happened, Mr. Speaker, sir, au vu et au su de tout le monde. They were the one who turned a blind eye on the whole operations of the BI group, while they knew very well how the public were being robbed in broad daylight, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order, both sides of the House, order.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order, both sides. Both sides, order. Order here. No threats, order. No threats, order. Third time, no threats, order. Third time. No threats in the House. Please continue.
I was saying, Mr. Speaker, sir, we wouldn't be here today had they not tolerated such a Ponzi-like scheme to exist. And not to mention, I mean, some people probably might have forgotten, l'affaire Sunkai, Je t'aime marketing. All these were being allowed to operate freely during the time they were in power. Like some would say, Labour Party at its best, Mr. Speaker, sir. Early on, Honorable Mohamed was saying blood on their hands, Mr. Speaker, sir. That reminds me of the Goraisak tragedy.
Order! 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 Order, please! Order! Order, please! Order, please!
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais avoir votre ruling concernant la déclaration du ministre imputing motive sur l'honorable Mohamed en parlant de l'affaire Goraisak. Je vous demande, Monsieur le Président.
Order! 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 Order here! Minister, order! You had a point of order?
Je vais me répéter, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, je voudrais avoir votre ruling concernant la déclaration du ministre qui subtilement essaye...
Order! Order!
Qui subtilement essaye de impute motive à l'honorable Shakil Mohamed, sachant très bien, Monsieur le Président, dans l'affaire Goraïsak. Je vous demande de demander au ministre, s'il est un honorable membre, de retirer ses propos.
Look out! I am on my feet. You wait. You can't give the sanction yourself. Let me give the sanction. You have a point?
Mr. Speaker, what the Honourable Minister has said is obviously referring to l'affaire Goraïsak, in which I was accused. But I'd like to point out that the standing orders, I'm sorry, this is common known. And
Wait. You don't have the floor.
may I allow...
Order!
And the Honourable Minister of Financial Services should not be allowed to make statements of that particular nature, precisely because what my friend said...
You made your point, I
No,
think.
secondly, which I made...
You made your point.
For this matter, I have entered cases before court where I've sued Sir Anirudh Jagannath for having said the same thing.
All these are not important. You make your point of order, shout and speak. Is that a point of order?
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, you said you gave a ruling that the minister can reply to Mr. Mohammed. One. And second, you said don't mention name that people are not in this house. And he's mentioning about Anirudh Jagannath. Should we go?
My ruling, I'll check recordings and I'll come with a solution. What is this? What is it?
I have a point of order.
That's
Under
it.
Order 42 of the standing orders, I would like your guidance on this, the chair. And I read, debate upon any motion below amendment shall be relevant to such motion. So I want to know whether what the honourable member is talking is
Let me rule.
against.
Let me rule and let it be the rule. I thank you very much. You're referring to standing orders. But when I listen to some speeches from both sides, let me tell you the truth, it is not a true reflection of the standing order. And if I had to take sanctions, many orators would have to just sit down. Thank you very much. Please, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would also refer to the points raised with regard to the preparation and filing of the audited financial statements. Though I replied last year at the PQ that was put to me that the accounts were being finalized, and I can confirm today that to the House that the annual reports and the audited financial statements for both the NPFL and the NIC for the period 2016 to 2020 have already been filed with the Registrar of Companies, and they are available on the website of the Registrar of Companies. Please go and check.
The Minister.
Anyone can go and check. It's on the website. It's available to the public, and they have been audited and filed as I'm mentioning. And also, last time the Honourable Ramphal mentioned about whether an actuarial certificate has been issued for the NIC. I can also confirm that an actual evaluation was made, and the firm of actuary has given a certificate, and that has been also filed. So There was another question with regard to the inquiry, the independent inquiry with regard to the sale of Britam Kenya. I must say, from the information that I have, the inquiry as regards to the hearing is being completed now, and a report is being drafted. A delay, unfortunately, happened due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Speaker, sir. I think I have replied to most of the points raised with regards to that particular subject matter. So, but I would like to conclude, Mr. Speaker, sir, say that despite the adverse consequences of the pandemic of COVID-19 on various sectors of the economy, government is finding ways and means to mitigate its economic and social impacts. This government has at heart the welfare of one and all, and had always done what was proper at that time to protect our people, to protect our financial stability, and also to protect our financial system. This decision was bold, but we took it without fear to protect the interest of the nation and ensure that the financial obligations and regulatory requirements are met alongside. This supplementary appropriation bill is therefore required to ensure continuity of our efforts to better protect the economic and social rights of our people. With these words, Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you.
Speaker, I will be 20 to 30 minutes. I hope you will allow me to start and finish before lunch. It will be much easier for everyone. Let me congratulate, Mr. Speaker, previous opposition orators, who I think, to my mind, have forcefully expressed the desperation of the BAI, ex-BAI policyholders, and the anger felt by many of our people about the way that the assets have been disposed and the way the whole BAI liquidation, if that's the word, has been carried out. As far as the state supplementary appropriation bill, whilst it is absolutely true, as the previous minister said just now, previous orator, that it is on a Tuesday, often been placed on a Tuesday, in my recollection, it has never been on two subsequent Tuesdays the same supplementary appropriation bill. That has never happened. Now, the Prime Minister had the occasion. I understand there was an urgency last time. The Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, kind enough to inform me. That's fine. But it could have been, this bill could have been scheduled for the Friday, say, so that we would have a normal session this Tuesday. So it's never been on two successive Tuesdays the same supplementary appropriation bill. That, therefore, does seem to show that it was deliberate in order not to avoid questions today. I'm sorry?
Go to the debate.
Well, I am responding to the fact that he said that it's never been on a Tuesday. It's always been on a Tuesday. I'm saying so. Never been on two Tuesdays. This is not the debate. But he raised it, Mr. Speaker, sir. With all due respect.
Not the debate. The debate is,
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. You raised it. I'm answering it. I'm answering it, Mr. Speaker. Now, this supplementary appropriation bill has come, and we need to look. My first point, Mr. Speaker. Do we really want to come and maintain the system where the supplementary appropriation bill is passed months and months and months after the actual expenditure has been incurred? The minister before me has just said that the payment has already been made, 11 billion rupees, 12 billion rupees in December. So this is merely a rubber stamp. Whatever we say here is for the record, is for the Hansard. It has already been paid. The special COVID allowance has already been paid. The pensions have already been paid. So we are just now rubber stamping. And I'm asking the question, which is a serious question, as to whether we want to continue in this format, in this respect, having this procedure, where this assembly, which one thing it has a power to do is approve government expenditure, whereas with this way of doing things, we are actually not approving nothing at all because it has already been paid. That is, Mr. Speaker, the big difference between when the budget is presented, the appropriation bill is passed. When it is passed, then the expenditure is spent. This is contrary to the budget that we'll have in a few months' time, in a few weeks' time, whereas we vote and then it is paid. Here, no. It had already been paid and we vote. That is, Mr. Speaker, so it's a question that it's a serious question that we need to answer for the future, bearing in mind that it has been like this in the past for some time. Now, I have two brief points to make about the thing, and then some points, and then I'll come to the elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, the special COVID allowance. Like many others, Mr. Speaker, we are happy. Policemen got the 15,000 rupees, healthcare workers. But it's good, Mr. Speaker, that we make the point that others did not. Because there will be, maybe, other confinements, other lockdowns. Scavengers, Mr. Speaker. What have they done wrong? They were picking up our rubbish all through the confinement. And it's not a pleasant job. Firemen at the same time. They answered every single call there was during the COVID, during the confinement, yet they got nothing. And the poor supermarket workers, Mr. Speaker. Some of the lowest paid workers in this country. Some of the, the Minister of Finance is credited to have a special sort for low-paid workers. These are some of the lowest paid workers in the country, working here, meeting hundreds of people every day, with only a perspex glass in front of them. I think, Mr. Speaker, it is not too late that we make provision in the House here for payment to these category of people, especially, Mr. Speaker, the poor supermarket workers, who, for me, are as essential a worker as any other of these other persons, Mr. Speaker, because without food, we would have died a long time ago. Mr. Speaker, I'll come now to the issue of pensions. 10.2, Mr. Speaker, item 10.2. 375 million rupees being voted today, already paid, most of it, for additional people coming onto the pension roll. Other additional people reaching the age of 60. Now, first thing you ask yourself is why at least hasn't the purchasing power of these poor pensioners been maintained? Why at least the purchasing power has not been maintained? Now, you see, if you look at the minimum wage, it was increased more than inflation. Very good. 375 rupees was more than the official inflation rate. Let me put it this way. But 230 rupees, a mere 230 rupees, would have been enough for government to maintain the dignity of our old people and maintain the purchasing power at a time when the rupee, which used to be worth $35, 35 rupees to the dollar, now 41 rupees to the dollar, has created an extremely expensive situation for the poor, for the old, being given that the old, Mr. Speaker, they spend a lot of money on on pharmacy, on medicine, etc. And the old age basket is not the same as the basket that Statistics Mauritius uses for the rest of the nation. So the people of old age, my point, Mr. Speaker, sir, have had a rough time with the depreciation of the rupee, having to spend so much hundreds of rupees more on medicine, etc., etc. And the least that could have been done, Mr. Speaker, is for the old age to have maintained their purchasing power. Now, the point here, Mr. Speaker, is this. We are in 2021. We have been promised an increase of 4,500 rupees per month, per pensioner, in 3 years' time, in 2024. 3 budgets are left for the government to honor its solemn promise it has made to the people, to the old people, the handicapped, the widows of Mauritius, to increase by 2024 the pensions to 13,500 rupees per person. 4,000 rupees additional per person. Nearly 50% increase, Mr. Speaker. Not nearly, 50% increase in the pension. Now, the Minister here is asking us to vote for 335 million. That's going to be for additional pensioners. So by 2024, not only will we have additional pensioners, which we will, but we will have also to account for a 50% increase in the pension, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. But please, Mr. Minister of Finance, tell us how it will be achieved. Have the courage to tell us how you will achieve it. You will certainly not achieve it through growth. I hope you don't come and tell us that. That is not possible. You're not going to get 50% growth over the next 3 years, maybe not any growth at all, because we still have a long way back to catch up from the growth position, the GDP position that we were in 2019. So how will you finance it? How sustainable, how achievable is your profit, is your promise? And this is, Mr. Speaker, the issue. We want to know, we will vote the 375 million rupees. We want to know, Mr. Speaker, whether the Minister of Finance will come up with the goods in a few weeks' time for the budget and start increasing substantially the pensions to the old, handicapped and widows, so that he will reach that 4,500 rupee additional payment per person per month in 3 years' time. So we will see, Mr. Speaker, sir, whether he will put his money where his mouth is. And that is, Mr. Speaker, my point. Because we have had the CSG, which has been called a Ponzi by actuaries, the CSG, Contribution Sociale Généralisée, which is anyway insufficient even to pay for the pensions that has already been given. So the CSG is already, for the higher paid people in Mauritius, a tax of 9% on the payroll. 9%. 6% paid by one, 3% paid by the employer. Employee 6%, 9%. So what it will be? It will be 20%. Tell us, how are you going to fund your promise that you have made and that we will hold you to account, and we will see to it that you honor your promise. So, Mr. Speaker, that was my first point. The second point, I will talk about when you look at the estimate of such expenditure, you realize that there is an elephant in the room, and that is obviously the 11.9 billion rupees we are asked to approve a payment that has already been made by government without approval by the Assembly, because it's now being approved, to the National Property Fund. So what would happen if we did not approve that today? Already been paid. This is the absurdity of what we are voting today. So 11.9 billion, that is nearly 12,000 million rupees. Nearly 12,000 million rupees. Now, Mr. Speaker, much has been said about the closure of BAI. I was Deputy Prime Minister at the time. It happened. It was probably inevitable once the Brahma Bank was closed overnight. We can talk about it sometime. But this is what I said, Mr. Speaker, in this House as Deputy Prime Minister on 15th of April 2015. One important issue, Mr. Speaker, here I'm reading, is that the conservators, liquidators, receivers, and I'm quoting, and whoever will be dealing with all these companies, preserve and achieve as much value to the various stakeholders as possible, so that the deposit holders in Brahma Bank, the insurance policy holders in British American Insurance, the creditors, and everybody can retrieve as much of the debt as possible from the conglomerate. It is very important that we preserve as much as possible of the value that exists in the company. That, Mr. Speaker, I didn't say from the opposition bench. I said that as a Deputy Prime Minister, because that was obvious. It was obvious, Mr. Speaker, that when you close, whatever reason we are closing, we had another way in the previous government of dealing with it, that is reducing substantially the related party transactions from 88% when I became Minister of Finance to 56%, and it would have been it would have gone maybe the same way. Maybe it would have been closed at the end of the day with a much smaller with a much smaller payment from government. That is the point, because it was already reduced. The related party transactions had already fallen from 88% to 56% over those 3 years. So who is to say that over the next 3 years it would not have fallen to 30%? In which case, the hole that exists still. And Mr. Speaker, you talk about hole. I don't want to go into it, Mr. Speaker, but I can debate at any time, anyone, on this issue. Let's come now to the issue at hand. We are being asked to approve the payment, of nearly 8,000 million rupees to a company called NPFL, Mr. Speaker. Now, NPFL, I just listened to the Honourable Minister before me. NPFL has not filed any audited accounts. Perhaps, you're an accountant, you will know. What the NPFL has filed is a financial summary. And I will table the financial summary. There is a big difference between an audited account and a financial summary, Mr. Speaker. A financial summary is an unaudited document. I hope the Minister will not try to teach me a difference between one or the other. I will not be happy with it. A financial summary filed by government, today I picked it up from Mrs. Senior herself, is an audited piece of paper that has been filed. It is 3 pages long. It is 3 pages long, something like 3 pages long. And this, Mr. Speaker, just to show everybody else who's not an accountant, this is the financial statements, not a financial summary, of NIC Limited. That is what has been filed for NIC Limited, and 3 pages have been filed for NPFL. And when you look at the pages that have been filed for NPFL, you do not have any of the information that he has just given to us today, Mr. Speaker. You don't have any information at all. And this is, in fact, what has been filed. I will table it so that the Minister can see the difference between what he has filed and who has said he has filed, and it is, unfortunately, I will not the word misleading, but it is, in fact, not the truth what you have said, and I think, hopefully, you will withdraw that later on as a gentleman. Mr. Speaker, therefore, when I look... Yes.
Is that a point of order?
Yes,
I give way, Mr. Speaker. You can speak.
He said what I said was the truth. What I said is the file according to the Companies Act. Exactly. That's right. Okay?
Exactly.
The accounts have been completed and filed, and according to the Act, filing is done.
This is the English way, Mr. Speaker. You can interrupt me. I have no problem. I gave way. So what I'm saying to you, in fact, you did not say that. You said we filed audited statements. Check back and you will see. But I accept your point that you filed according to the Companies Act, and I will come to that, Mr. Speaker, because a company of which we are asked to invest 12 billion rupees of our money has only filed, and the Minister has accepted, a 3-page piece of paper, unaudited 3-page piece of paper. Now, on that, Mr. Speaker, it is why. You know why it is so? I'll tell you why it is so. This company has assets of 10 billion rupees. Is that so? 11 billion rupees. 11 billion rupees assets that the company has. But its turnover, the fruits of this 11 billion rupees that this company has, is only 32 million rupees per annum, Mr. Speaker. That shows you what wastage there has been in that company, that you put 11 billion rupees worth of assets. If you put it in the bank, you will get more money. 11 billion rupees worth of assets only generates 30 billion rupees of income, and that is why it is able to file a financial summary. Because small and medium enterprises, Mr. Finance will note, small and medium enterprises, they file financial summaries when the turnover is less than 50 million. And that is why the government has used this procedure effectively to deny the public any knowledge at all of what happens at MPFL. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, is it a serious government that would ask us to vote 12 billion rupees to pay for a company and shamefully only files 3 pages that the public or ourselves as parliamentarians can access? Is that, Mr. Speaker, the type of government that we want? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Minister, that we should accept your word for it? File the actual financial statements, audited, and then we talk. Then we will know what has happened. Then we will know what use has been put to 11 billion rupees of assets to generate only 30 million rupees of turnover and a loss at the end of the day. Big loss, nearly 200 million rupees loss, Mr. Speaker. Then we can talk. Don't hide things. Don't hide, Mr. Speaker. 254 million rupee loss for the period. I will table that, Mr. Speaker. You can see I am telling the truth. Now, Mr. Speaker, National Property Fund. Here I have another problem. When I look at the estimate of supplementary expenditure, and you know, we all understand English. We know what an investment is, what a payment is, and what a conversion is. I'm converting a loan that someone owes me to share capital. That's a conversion. But it's not a conversion when I am repaying somebody else's loan with my money. That is not a conversion. That is repayment of a loan with fresh capital. This, Mr. Speaker, is misleading. Provision required to convert the advance provided to the company into equity. It is not the advance provided by government that is being converted, is it? You've just said so yourself. It is the advance provided by the banks. On a small amount, 600 million, you just said so yourself. 600 million was paid, is being converted. The rest is a repayment of a loan given by a private sector bank to NPFL, for which the NPFL has been unable to repay because of such poor, paltry results. It has not been able to pay its loan back to SBM and others, and the government is putting taxpayers' money into it. And that is the truth, and this is, Mr. Speaker, not the truth, the conversion. It is not what is happening. No, it's not. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, I'll come to NIC in a moment, because there again, it's not happening. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't have a huge amount to say, except I wanted to raise these issues, which hurt me, Mr. Speaker, because I cannot have it that we conduct the affairs of government and treat the opposition and the public in this horrible way. And I cannot, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because we need to know how were assets sold. Were the assets sold to the highest bidder? What was sold? All that, hopefully. What is owed? All that would come if we had this decent pair of financial statements like there has been forced to do for the NIC. Now, Mr. Speaker, mention was made also with the Britam Commission of Inquiry. Now, I have respect for all judges, all ex-judges, but is it this ex-judge, Mr. Speaker, has taken 4 years to inquire into a single transaction, the sale of assets? 4 years, Mr. Speaker. Now, what self-respect would you have? Okay, COVID's been 1 year. What self-respect would you have? The Commission of Inquiry. Okay, probably he's found nothing. If he's found everything, he would have come up with something. There's no report. We can presume that there's nothing to be reported on. But he must have the decency to report and finish with it. A commission inquiry on one single transaction cannot take 4 years. Cannot take 4 years. It is unfair on all the people involved, including unfair on the policyholders of BAI, who are entitled to know what happened. It is, of course, unfair on everyone else whose name has been put into cause in this issue. So, Mr. Speaker, if the judge is listening today, I hope, let's pray that he can write the few pages left of his report and submit it. And also, let's hope that the government will have the decency to publish this, whatever it is, it says there, to publish the report soon as possible, Mr. Speaker. Because in the absence of information, everything, Mr. Speaker, becomes speculation. So, Mr. Speaker, just quickly onto NIC. Now, NIC, it is, Mr. Speaker just said it is restructuration. What's restructuration? What does restructuration mean? What happened in NIC is quite clear. When it took over the assets of XBAI, it brought the value down by 4 billion rupees. You know that, I know that. The value of the assets were brought down by 4 billion rupees because it thought it was valued at less. Whether it's right or wrong, we don't know. And that is what's happening, no restructuration. We are putting government money now to fill up the coffers of NIC so that it balances the books, because the whole of 4 billion rupees, plus the losses, etc., that have been made in the past, Mr. Speaker. And the point is, the remaining assets of the BAI, what are they? Apollo? We know that Apollo is being rented, I think, at 60 million rupees a year. Any estate agent will tell you what the value is. You divide it by 0.05%, you get the value of what it is. 1.2 billion would be Apollo on the basis of the rental. Minister of Finance can confirm that. Now, and then so Apollo not worth all that much. Certainly not the 2.5 that I mentioned by my colleague. So the government will have to step in and pay. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we have Mobank. Mobank is loss-making. Accumulated losses at Mobank. There you go. And then what else do you have? NIC. NIC, we just put 4 billion rupees of good money in there. Still, we'll need to put another 1.7 billion rupees. The minister has just confirmed. So there's no value in these companies anymore. They're just sucking up, swallowing government funds. And so, Mr. Speaker, a conservative estimate of what it has cost the taxpayer, the BAI affair. I'll tell you what it is. It's 11.9 billion rupees today. It's 3.5 billion rupees that the Bank of Mauritius, you said so yourself also, has invested in the company, has lent to the company. It's 6 billion rupees that has been put into Mobank. Okay, I agreed, Mobank is in fact two banks, but still, I don't have the breakdown. Let's say 6 billion rupees into Mobank. It's, Mr. Speaker, another 1.7 billion rupees that government has already committed to pay the NIC. Minister has just said so himself a moment ago, to come to 5.7 billion rupees to NIC. And the shortfall for Apollo, which will be a minimum of 1.1 million, because the Minister of Finance has given an undertaking that it will meet any shortfall. So that, Mr. Speaker, it's more than 24 billion rupees that the public funds have been used. Very little chance of recuperating any of it. After 6 years, obviously, we would have done so. And it is now that the NIC is going to run and strictly control costs. I don't know if the minister realizes how ridiculous it is to say after 6 years that the NIC will now be well run, reduce its costs, etc., as if people there have been sleeping for the last 6 years. But still, so we're talking about, Mr. Speaker, 24.2 billion at my conservative estimate of public funds. Now, the actual amount of the policyholders, how many was it? Who remembers how much the actual policyholders were owed? 24 billion, I think. So, what's happened to any assets of the company? Has it just been wasted in expenditure, in interest paid, blah, blah, blah? 24 billion rupees of government money has gone in. There were originally 24 billion rupees of policyholders' funds. And not all have been paid. So, the only conclusion is that when I said back then in 2015 when I spoke as Deputy Prime Minister, I said that the most important thing is to preserve value of the assets. That hasn't been done because it's clear that hardly any assets have been realized, anyway not sufficient to cover even the running costs for all these years and the wastage and the writing-offs that has happened. So this, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a national scandal called ex-British American Insurance, managed by this gentleman. We end up with this situation. Mr. Speaker, that's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to repeat what my colleagues have said, but I must say that I subscribe entirely to what has been said on the part of the opposition in this debate. Thank you, sir.
Suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.